it's Isabel, and today it's going to be a bit of a different video because I am going to talk about movies. I thought it would be fun if I tried to pair up some of my favourite movies with some book recommendations. And the way I did it is I tried to come up with books that had a similar theme or vibe to the movie that I was going to talk about. So it's going to be a bit of a, if you like this movie, you would probably also like this book, and the other way around kind of video. Let's start with a movie that I have only just rewatched because I just love watching and rewatching it, and it is Bad Times at the El Royale. The reason why I really like rewatching this movie every now and again is because it is visually stunning and it also has an amazing soundtrack. It is set in the 60s and it follows, I think, 7 different characters, and they're all strangers, but they come together in this Hotel El Royale for one night because for some reason or another they have all decided to stay at that hotel for that night. And of course each of these characters has a secret of their own, and throughout the movie you get more and more backstory to each of the characters and the secrets are slowly revealed. One thing that I really like about Bad Times at the El Royale is how it really incorporates the aesthetics and the music also of the time that it is set in, and you really feel immersed in this world of these kind of run-down hotel that is also, funnily enough, set on the border of California and Nevada. And that split also really plays a role in the movie because you kind of have the good side and the bad side, and all of the characters kind of walk on that imaginary line in between. The book that I would recommend together with this movie is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Station 11 is set in a kind of post-apocalyptic world. At the beginning of the book you find out that there has been a pandemic that has wiped out a lot of humanity, and the main action then takes place a few years after this pandemic, but the book does flash back and forth between different times. In the post-pandemic setting, you follow a group of people who are musicians and actors, and they put on Shakespeare plays, and they travel kind of from place to place to perform these plays. And as I've said, you switch back and forth between different times and also different characters, and what I thought was really fun in Station 11 is that all of these characters are in some way connected to some of the other characters, and throughout the book you slowly find out what these connections are. So one of the reasons why I think Bad Times at the El Royale and Station 11 go really well together is because they both center on these chance encounters between different characters. And they also both have really interestingly written characters. I think all of the characters aren't good or bad necessarily, they're all somewhere in between, and they all have their own secrets and goals that they want to achieve. And I found it really interesting to see how these different characters also react very differently to being put into kind of difficult situations. And funnily enough, both in Bad Times at the El Royale and Station 11, the protagonists are also at some point confronted by a cult that is led by a charismatic young man that has very questionable morals. And for some reason, stories that somehow involve cults have always fascinated me, because a lot of them then look at what actually draws people to cults. And that is also the case for Bad Times at the El Royale and Station 11, because I think ultimately they both look at what people are willing to do and how far they are willing to go for what is important to them. Another aspect that I really enjoyed in both the book and the movie is how they integrate other types of art and other stories into their plot. So for Bad Times at the El Royale, the music is a really integral part of the storytelling, and the songs that are used aren't just there in the background, but they're really a part of the plot, I feel like, because they have a lot to do with the action that's happening and also kind of drive the plot forward. And Station 11 does a similar thing, in my opinion, with the Shakespeare plays that it incorporates. And Station 11 also talks a lot explicitly about the importance of art and the role it plays in our lives. And I always enjoy when art talks about art and kind of highlights the importance of art in our lives. Then next up, I have a murder mystery pairing. And the movie that I want to recommend for this pairing has instantly become a favourite of mine, and it is Knives Out, directed by Rian Johnson. Even though it has only recently come out, it has a real classic murder mystery feel to it, because it is set in this big manor in the countryside, and the rich patriarch of a family is found dead after his birthday party. And everybody in his family instantly becomes a suspect, and this kind of Poirot-esque detective comes in to try and figure out what has actually happened. Like Bad Times at the El Royale, Knives Out is also really visually stunning, and it has so many little details that give you hints and that are just really interesting to look at and explore. And as I've said, it is clearly inspired by classic murder mysteries, so I couldn't resist pairing it up with an Agatha Christie book. And the one that I went with is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, because, as I've said, Knives Out has a detective that really reminded me of Poirot. Like in many later Poirot books, in The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, you already follow around Poirot as he unravels clues and tries to piece them together to find out what the big mystery is. But what I think really sets this novel apart from other murder mysteries is the big twist at the end. I absolutely did not see it coming, it completely shocked me, but then I actually went back to kind of look at all the hints and clues that were given to us, and you are given all the parts of the puzzle, which I think is a really clever thing to do, and the novel is just structured so well that it actually tells you everything you need to know, but it's still kind of difficult to guess the plot twist, but once you know it, it just makes a lot of sense. And that is one of the reasons why I think that people who enjoyed Knives Out would also enjoy The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and the other way around, because they both, in my opinion at least, have brilliant plot twists that I didn't see coming. I wasn't able to guess either of them. And that also makes both of them fun to rewatch or reread, because you can then look at all of the hints that were given, and once you know the ending you can really appreciate how well both of them are crafted. Another reason why I think these two would go really well together is because they both have really fun, quirky characters, from the eccentric detective to the clueless police, to all of the suspects who have secrets of their own that they kind of try to hide from the investigation. I especially enjoyed the kind of very dramatic family dynamic that Knives Out had going on, for example, but I think all of the characters in Christie novels, as well in Knives Out, are really fun to watch and to get to know. And even though both the book and the movie are technically about murder and deceit, they are ultimately just really fun to watch, because they both have that perfect combination of suspense but also humour that, in my opinion, make murder mysteries so enjoyable. Moving on from murder mysteries, I have two recommendations for music lovers. And the movie that I want to recommend for this pairing is Bohemian Rhapsody, directed by Bryan Singer. Bohemian Rhapsody is a biopic following the band Queen all the way from their beginnings to their really famous Live Aid concert. And as you would expect in a movie about a band, it has a lot of songs, it has many of their recorded songs, but it's also mixed in with live performances, and everybody in the cast does an absolutely brilliant job of portraying the different members of the band, especially Rami Malek, who's a surprisingly convincing Freddie Mercury. For those of you who watch a lot of BookTube, the book that I'm going to recommend in combination with Bohemian Rhapsody probably isn't a surprise. It is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The book also follows a band from their beginnings all the way to their infamous breakup. and this time it is a completely fictional band. But the way it is written in interview format with like the different people from the band and who had to do with the band. It really feels like it is a real band that you are following, and you really feel like you get to know these characters in the book. And the plot focuses heavily on the interactions and relationships between these characters, and I have to say they did really feel like real human beings to me, because so many of their actions and reactions really surprised me and were really interesting to read about. I think both Bohemian Rhapsody and Daisy Jones and the Six are great for people who like reading about kind of close-knit friendship groups and the dynamics that exist between people in such groups. Because they both follow a band, they both also have a very strong focus on creativity. And one thing that I found really interesting in both the book and the movie is how they talk about songwriting and how different members of the bands have influenced each other, and how kind of what was going on in the band members' lives also had a real influence on their creative output. And because both of these bands, both the real and the fictional, kind of became very famous in the 70s, the whole sex, drugs and rock and roll lifestyle is obviously also a big part of both the book and the movie. And because of that, both the book and the movie also really look at fame and what fame does to people, and how it can also be very destructive both for the individual but also for the band as a whole. But even though they do go to these kind of dark places, I think ultimately they are really reassuring and hopeful, because they really emphasize the kind of friendship bonds that exist between the different band members, and that also help each of the band members out in some way. And I also think that both of them are a really good reminder that even famous people are, in the end, just people who have their hopes and dreams and problems of their own that they go through. Even though they might do all of that in just a tad bit more of a dramatic fashion than most people do. And those were all of the books and movies I wanted to talk about today. They are, of course, by far not all of my favourite movies. I do have a few more ideas for favourite movies that I might want to combine with books. So if you liked this video, please tell me and I will do more of them in the future. But that was it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will hopefully see you in my next video. Bye!